So sorry
Yeah.
for the delay getting going tonight. We're going to continue our series about ego defenses as quote superpowers, and we explained to you previously that part of the reason for calling them superpowers, we don't want you to think the less mature and more primitive ones are somehow superpowers. They're not. They're bad news. If you experience them or use them, they're bad news for you. But they all have analogous, more mature versions. And
Hmm.
so we thought tonight we would talk about a very common workplace problem, also a triangulation in romantic relationship problem, friendship problems. It's such a universal primitive ego defense. It's called displacement,
Hmm.
which is kind of like blame shifting in a way from the narcissistic abuse cycle. um, Jeremy, I'll let you riff a little bit on this as a primitive ego defense displacement. And then we need to think ahead about what would the superpower version, the mature version of it be that
Well,
corrects
I
it.
have a good counter for that. I have a good foil for that. We'll talk about it because it's a whole nother defense that's kind of close. So that's a good teaser for the audience. To stick around. So displacement occurs when someone shifts aggressive or just unacceptable impulses from one target, usually a person or a situation, onto another one. So what that does is it allows the person who is displacing, the displacer, to avoid conflict with someone that they consider higher status or problematic to argue with. So it could be a spouse, right? When you're equals, it could be a boss who's your superordinate and you're the subordinate. It could be anything, even your kids. Like maybe you don't want to fight with them, but you've got that residue of anger or anxiety or panic or whatever, and it shifts onto something else. Usually, some other person or entity or concept that is more vulnerable or safer
Right,
to take
right,
your aggression out on. So, what ends up happening is the problem isn't resolved with the person that you consider higher status or problematic in some way. And you've created a secondary problem in the form of someone that you've initiated or exacerbated a conflict with. So, um, and you see this play out. I think all of us at one time or another have been subjected to it or have done it, usually both. We're all human.
right, right.
So, yeah, and you can see kind of the beginnings of triangulation there of pulling somebody else in or creating two problems where there was one.
Right, right. We all were once children, and so likely as children we did this.
Right.
You could call it finger pointing, right? The teacher walks into the room and the child has their hand in the cookie jar. Or, I don't know what cookies are doing in a classroom, but I'm just making that up. And the one kid goes, "No, Johnny did it. Johnny's the one that was taking the cookies." 'Cause
Right.
he doesn't want the teacher to, get him in trouble for the 5th time
Hmm.
this the classic, uh, anecdote that they gave us in medical school was, and this is like 30 multiple, more than 30 years ago. It was granddad dies of cancer. It was unavoidable. They did everything they could. It was a really malignant tumor, and the family's angry at granddad for leaving and angry
Hmm.
at him for smoking his whole life, right? So on some
Right.
level, they're angry at granddad, but it's utterly unacceptable to, want to attack the guy on his deathbed or soil his memory at the funeral. So therefore, you blame the nurses and maybe the doctors. Maybe you even
Yes.
maybe you even sue. It's
Right.
behind every malpractice lawsuit, pretty much. But
Mm.
that uh, behind every there are far more frivolous ones, just dubious on the facts such suits than there are legitimate ones of somebody doing a legitimate wrong. But
Right.
but it's behind all that, right? So it's unacceptable to attack your lost dear family member for smoking their whole life. Therefore, you blame whoever else was in the vicinity. And
Yeah.
anyone will do. I think it's also true, anyone will do. But as being basically a scapegoat, anyone will do as a target of your ire so that you don't have to get in conflict with the person you really are angry with on some level, maybe even unconsciously so. Don't
Yeah.
even realize that you're angry at the person. The true the, the true violator,
Yeah.
of your boundaries. No.
No, I don't. I think that's brilliant. In the Christian context, there's people who uh, really want. They can. I think they can do that two ways. Where there's either they're afraid to express their anger to God for things that happened in life, which it's safe to do. I mean, many Christians would say, I would agree, like we serve a big God. He can handle your anger. So you get people who are very holier than thou, who don't ever want to express anger at the whatever life situation is. And so they end up taking it out on themselves, kind of internally introjecting that and becoming depressed, which is anger toward the self, or you get the anger at other people because it's their fault somehow. And you get people who also offload responsibility and think that maybe everything is God's fault, and they don't integrate an idea of free will. And so there's people who've asked. I heard someone ask, like, well, why did God allow this? And it was a person got a charge for something illegal they did, and then that's an interesting thing to unravel, because it's like, was he supposed to step in and stop you from doing something illegal? What's the precedent for that in daily life apart from special instances in scripture? So this is a very rich, actually, topic, the displacement. I mean, because I had a supervisor who was it was a Christian counseling place, and he said that he had a couple in there, and someone, like, he encouraged the people to discuss their anger at God in that context, because there was some terrible situation. I found that really interesting. That hasn't left me in the years since being a therapist. So you made me think of that
Well,
idea, like, take it to the root of who you're afraid to share anger or disappointment with.
oh yeah, there's all kinds of ways that can wrap into trauma too. Like, you had a bad relationship with your dad, and so
Yeah,
you're afraid to confront any dad-like figure and this sort of thing.
yeah,
So you use it a lot, and then it's going to pathologically last into adulthood and really mess with your life. Um, I was going to ask you whether there could be some examples that are kind of bigger scale, and I wanted to do two things surrounding that. First off, Natalie is here, Martinek, amazing expert on narcissism for sure, and anything narcissistic is going to also automatically pertain to primitive and immature ego defenses. I'll
yes,
say, I'll say that again. Anything narcissistic related is going to automatically pertain to most or all um, primitive and immature ego defenses. So Natalie is maybe here, maybe listening. Be glad to have you join if you felt like it. And also, Jeremy, I wanted to say the big picture thing I wanted to ask you about this topic is Rob Henderson has written a lot about um, what is it called? The jealousy, and Natalie writes about envy recently. The envy and jealousy between elites toward each other,
mm,
right? And his initial claim to fame, there'll be many more, but his initial claim to fame is about um, the luxury beliefs idea, right? And how luxury beliefs harm the poor and benefit those who display them, like virtue signaling, or like wearing 40 years ago wearing a Versace shirt or something like this. And they kind of gave up on that because everybody bought Versace on the cheap, and now they had to
yeah,
have something else to display how cool they are and how elite they are. But
yeah.
displacement as an ego defense from, as Rob describes, the envy from the middle level elite toward the super high up elite, where they displace their anger and, well, really their envy, which is a murderous instinct in my opinion. It's different from jealousy. Jealousy is I want what you own and you can have it too, but I want it too. Envy is I wish you didn't exist because
Mm.
you have things I don't. It's much darker and um dark triad type stuff. Envy is. It's deep. Perhaps one of the worst deadly sins. So when Rob Henderson talks about luxury beliefs seem like you're championing the poor, but
Hmm.
you really don't care about the poor. You care about those above you who are higher up elites that you want to harm by showing that you are so giving and generous and nurturing of the poor, and while
Yeah.
you're harming the poor. Could that be displacement of anger and maybe envy held toward the upper echelons and then directed instead at the poor?
Yeah, you're saying when people that are mid status get angry at the people they're supposedly helping because they don't think they can afford to show they're angry at their superiors.
Yes.
Yeah, there was actually a really good Family Guy episode. That's something you may hear more from me, surprisingly. Where Peter Griffin, Peter, is married to Lois Griffin. Now, Lois's father is stinking rich, like filthy rich, Carter Pewterschmidt. So Carter and Babs are rich. There you go. And there's some episodes that riff on that very interestingly. So one of them includes Peter Griffin going with his father-in-law Carter to a country club, and Peter and Carter get into some kind of hijinks, and they both get kicked out, and Carter loses his membership, and he's beside himself and angry at Peter. And so Peter concocts and hatches this ridiculous way to get Carter back into the country clubs. They go and impersonate some other dignitaries, and it falls through. And Carter gets found out by the owner of the country club, and he starts dressing down Peter and saying, like, "You fool!" Blah 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 blah. It was, and the head of the country club says, "Wow, I've changed my mind about you, Carter. The way you dressed down your lesser was so impressive. Welcome back to country club." And so you see, Carter was upset about, not getting back in, and he was merciless to Peter. And the person who was more elite to him saw, like, wow, you know how to take out your aggression on someone who's a peon. You're back in. So how's that? I mean, it's such a trope that it makes cartoons. It's the idea that
Right.
you
Right.
mistreat the people beneath you,
Right.
because it's all part of the game. That your anger it's like the purge. It's like
Right. Right.
the movie Hostel. In the movie Hostel, people who are rich enough can buy a person to
Right.
off because they can't do that. They want to get the anger out. And so this fear, I'll up you one. I'll agree with you and say the fear of being targeted and harmed because you're viewed as lesser by people who are very malevolent is something very primal, akin almost to like an archetypal fear, I would say, something very deep.
Well, that doesn't that go back to snakes, to the fear of snakes? That was one of the highest primitive fears in. I mean, not that I've interviewed hunter gatherer societies from 20,000 years ago or something, but
Yeah.
I've read a lot about the symbolism of snakes and why it exists in religious literature, biblical literature, this sort of thing, as the
Yeah.
ultimate, nefarious, narcissistic, dark, hidden,
Right.
grotesque, no arms or legs,
Hmm.
eating and procreating is all it does. It reminds me of snakes, what you just said. So,
Yes. Yeah. Well, the snake is portrayed as very clever, and it introduces the concept of narcissism to Adam and Eve by saying, basically, "Oh, you're content with all this? Okay, meaning the literal Garden of Eden where Adam and Eve are immortal, right? Sounds like a good deal to me. But the snake says, um, yeah, but you could be God. Wouldn't you rather have that up here? And so the idea that it's not enough to be a created being with perfect health forever when you can be the creator. Of course, that was a lie, but yeah, you're very right. Like the snake is the deceiver, the clever deceiver. Thankfully, foxes don't have that bad a reputation, or I'd be in, my name would not be that great to have. But I think you're right. I think, but it's interesting how that appeals to grandiosity, literally, to become God. That's kind of the highest primal grandiosity.
Well, we have a gentleman wrote in with a
Yes.
question, and we should maybe dig into that a little bit. I want to say though to paid members for whom we were about to also start a live stream Zoom, an interactive Zoom where we can actually see you, talk to you. We're going to delay that until the end of this talk with Jeremy because this is going to be so rich. Hope you're okay with that. I will get on that channel, which is at courses.romanticdynamics.com
Nice.
after Jeremy and I are done talking. Um, the Adam and Eve thing, before we go to Michael's statement or question here,
Yeah.
the
His
Adam and Eve
statement's good,
thing.
by the way. I love it. I was going to,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
just keep going.
no, we want to dig into that. In a simplistic way, I long ago latched on to the symbolism of the Adam and Eve Garden of Eden thing as that's childhood. And in childhood, people pay for things for you. They buy you toys. They feed you. My little son, he's not even picking up his sushi plate and taking it back to the kitchen. I get to do that. I'll have to have a talk with him about that. But it's the Garden of Eden because you don't have to do any work. Everything's provided
Hmm.
to you. People love you. They hug you.
Hmm.
Your parents are God to you. They're a model for God. And then the tree of knowledge of good and evil
Right.
is experience growing up
Hmm.
toward adulthood. And you discover some people are good, but many people are not good. They're bad. They are
Hmm.
harmful to you. They do terrible things. Um, and your friends, you want to be careful choosing them. The most important factor in happiness, we now know, right, because of the Harvard happiness study, are your friendships. So the Garden of Eden is childhood, and biting of the forbidden fruit is the fruit of knowledge. And
Hmm.
once you get that knowledge that the world is not perfect, and like in the film, since you do great film examples, Jeremy, like in the film Into the Wild with
Hmm.
Emil Hirsch, who has a super narcissistic father that he's running away from, and he makes the grave, literally grave, deadly error of unconsciously thinking that nature will be his father, that nature will care for him, take care of him if he learns how to hunt and find berries to eat and live literally in the wild. He thinks
Hmm.
nature's going to be his dad, and it wasn't.
Right.
Nature doesn't care. It does some things you could think are good or lucky, and it does many things that are bad and dangerous, and it's random, right? So I think of Into the Wild on this topic as a film.
Right.
Although I like your film suggestion as well. It's always good to bring that in. So yeah, so let's get to Michael and what
Hmm.
Michael says. On a larger biblical scale, Moses displays anger impulsively and aggressively in striking the rock instead of following more precise instructions or otherwise dealing with the stress from the complainers. He struck a rock. The result, he was disallowed from entering the promised land. Hmm, I did not know that.
Well, yeah, Moses was known more as a man of I don't want to say of war. Um, so it's what's interesting. So Moses also came down from Mount Sinai getting the 10 commandments, and he dropped the initial 10, and they broke the tablets because he saw the um that the Israelites were worshiping like the golden calf. So that's interesting. There was something else remote with Moses doing that. So I mean, in that case, um, he broke the tablets, and that was like something valuable that shouldn't have been broken because he was upset at people. So interesting. Um, Very fascinating. You don't believe me? Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's Deuteronomy. That's Numbers 20:10-13. I mean, that's a good example. The biblical stuff is just rife with great themes on development. I mean, I like the idea of the childhood as Garden of Eden. I think many people who struggle with the glass half empty perspective and either borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder kind of relive the Garden of Eden continuously, where when something's going well or good, there could always be better, or there's a way to make Eden miserable. And so they continue to leave it in some way. There's like a spiritual unease, and it's very sad.
It you're making me think of our last talk we were gonna do, almost did, was on fantasy, I believe, as a defense. And I almost think of fantasizing about whatever your personal Garden of Eden is, as a somehow related defense to this topic, the Garden of Eden topic. Fantasy, it's like the ultimate fantasy. And then we spend our lives pursuing it or trying to
Hmm.
return to it. And, maybe we try to create a really great career that's helping people. And maybe we try to create a family. Maybe we have offspring. Maybe we have a lasting marriage, which
Yeah,
is which is an attempt, an imperfect attempt to return to the Garden of Eden,
right.
where everything is taken care of, and we have a retirement and so forth. So I think I think we're getting off topic a little bit, but
Sure.
I kind of think that's okay. I like just sort of riffing with you. Um, Displacement, though.
Well, that was I mean, that was a great story. The Numbers 20 story from Michael, that was pretty accurate. Like Moses is emotional regulation, a term, maybe a version of that existed back then, but it's certainly modern language. He lost emotional regulation and, suffered some consequence for that. And so I think there's so much naivete that can come with that can prompt displacement. I mean, if someone doesn't believe they ever have the right to speak up, or they're in a very abusive work situation, and they could do better, but instead they don't question the game they're playing.
Oh, you
They're
see
meeting
that a
people.
ton at work.
Yeah.
I almost think of, work. It is true in romantic relationships that we have the triangulation and the narcissistic abuse cycle and all this. But I think the workplace, this is where like Natalie Martinet could come in and talk about this. The workplace is really where it's at for displacement because there's always a boss and a boss's boss. And the boss is saying, Jenny is not so good at what she does. Don't you agree? And you're
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I guess whatever you say.
Yeah.
There's like hierarchies of power. And depending
Yeah.
on how scary the workplace is, one place I worked, we called it the Grim Reaper. You never know when the Grim Reaper's coming for you. Meaning there's no
Uh,
rhyme or reason that anybody could tell on, why people are kept or why people are let go and things like
right.
this. So if it's a fear imbued workplace, I'll bet that displacement is huge and operational in such a place, as opposed to following the Gallup 12 factors to
Mm.
employee retention, right? Do I have the right equipment to do what I need to do? Am I treated well? Am I respected? Is there meaning in what I do? I
Yeah.
forget all I forget all 12, but these are the perennial famous Gallup 12 poll
Hmm.
results. There are 12 items that if you have these items, your workplace will last and there will not be turnover. The business will be successful, at least in terms of, human resources, manpower, they used to call it. You won't lose people. You'll keep them for life if you so choose as an
Right.
employee, right? So displacement, I don't think is going to happen nearly as often in a workplace that has these Gallup 12
Hmm.
factors in order, but one that doesn't, I'll bet it's probably the number one kind of human social habit that goes on in such workplaces.
Yeah. I mean, you need to feel connected to the fruits of your labor. Um, I've worked with clients before who do not, who they felt like cogs in the machine, and sometimes they are. And so a good job is going to help you connect with the the task that you're doing. I mean, so basically, and this is what I've discovered, the jobs that allow your personality and your individuality to be at play the most are the highest status jobs. So the jobs with the most meaning, like doctor, finance, tech, like if you think about famous doctors or famous tech people like Steve Jobs, obviously, they are the product and then they scale their ideas, right? So they're ultimate examples of meaning and being connected to work. And then the further down you go, things like there's nothing, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with entry level jobs. I would not say that. But people who do things that don't require them to almost think or use their frontal lobe at all, there's probably a lot of dissatisfaction there. And usually there's a way that you could say, well, this is getting me towards something else. Or I really enjoy this actually. It's a calm job I can do while I pursue hobbies or whatever. But it's interesting because I think there's an upward trajectory where what society considers most valuable is very often more connected to you being the person who is kind of the product, if that makes sense. Like you've proven that you can earn it to be like the job challenging. I mean, anyway, that's a whole separate tangent, but not really because you can say, well, when people start to feel stripped of meaning in their job and they are just doing a simple task and they're not being valued for it, that can feel very humiliating.
Yes.
And there can be a
Yes.
lot of projection and there can be a lot of fighting and issues with bosses. Like the worst case is for the middle management situation where you've got bosses that are upset with you, and then you've got your subordinates are upset at you, and you're in the
Right.
sandwich there. You're the meat of the sandwich there.
Right. Right.
I know that's very difficult for people.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. I think of yeah, welcome, Justin. Justin just came in. Um
Yes, good to see him.
I think I got two examples. Sometimes my little boy likes McDonald's, but they got to be two cheeseburgers, maybe four. They got to have only ketchup, nothing else, no onions. Onions can't even have touched it. No tomato, no lettuce, just really intense about food. And sometimes I drive out of this McDonald's and yep, there's some onions in there that or they just like threw a burger in because it was available. Then he gets mad and I have to go back and all this sort of thing. Different topic. But I walk back in this one time and I go, "Hey guys, my kid will not eat this unless it's exactly prepared, you know, this certain way." And the manager's there, and boy, I'll tell you, he goes, "Yes, sir. We're gonna fix that. We are working on that kind of issue. We really want to, uh, you know, turn this franchise here around." And the guy was deadly serious about doing his managerial work, even though it
Yeah.
was McDonald's. And it's the kind of thing you could see in the future for that person expanding, his career into other vistas. Another example of this is oh 8 years ago, 9 years ago, my wife buys a new car in Chicago, and we go to the dealership, and it's the chief of sales who was dealing with us. And he was this really tall, thin Morgan Freeman kind of persona, and just very genteel and very helpful and informative and not pushy in selling. And, she ends up getting the car. And for some strange reason, I had this intuition that it, it felt like he had worked for some friends of mine in the past because of his maybe use of language and his presence and how he presented himself. And I said, "This is a weird off chance thing, sir, but any chance you ever worked for the Melmans, the Melman brothers of Chicago, who do all kinds of boutique restaurants?" And he goes, "It's funny you should say that. I worked for the Melmans, for Rich Melman, the father, for 25 years or something as their chief manager of operations, and I got nothing but good things to say about them. In fact, I was hard up at one point and did not have a domicile, and Rich helped me buy a house, and he said, 'Just pay it forward,'
Mm.
kind of thing. He did some kind of special financial help for this gentleman, and this is just an intuition that I had about this. And I don't know why I'm getting off on that tangent.
Good service.
Well, good service and the just how far treating people well in the workplace when you have the power, how far it can go.
Yeah.
I mean, it can ripple over lifetimes and affect so many other people. Whereas the safe play is displacement.
Yeah.
That right, the safe bet for keeping your job and staying cool with the boss for this week at least is displacement. To blame others, blame shift to others, or to
Yeah.
pile on the scapegoating wagon.
Well, I think this is something that applies to most industries where if you work in sales and customer service where it's commission based, there's going to be a temptation to align kind of in a coalition of you and the sales staff and your boss versus the customer. And you're going to get every deal and you're going to be really cutthroat about it. And maybe you sacrifice your customer service attitude and your emotional connection to the customer because you don't want to let them get to you where you come off your quote A game. Um, but when you can show that you really do care about the customer, the client, whatever, that serves you very well. And you haven't forgotten that you're a customer in other industries, just not the one you work in. So I think that balancing act of not carrying anxiety over sales or anger over your sales numbers over to the customer and displacing them, like if they would only do better, they'd buy from me. It's a real
I agree.
balancing act to serve
Right.
people who rely on you and people who are above you who can evaluate you, because then you're evaluated by your boss and your customers very often. So it is, and people work that out. Very wise people work that out through seeing, okay, what can I do to reach my numbers and what I need? Sure, but how do I also build some real connection with the customer and help them out in a way where we both get what we need? And it goes to game theory. I think Adam and Eve, by the way, I wanted to say this, might be a first historical example of game theory because they were not a united front. And I think blaming Eve is a cheap misogynistic thing to do. I won't get into, but they were divided. There was a triangulation between Eve and the serpent against Adam, by the way.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you can't build coalitions against your customer or against your boss if you want to keep your job. But very crafty people will come up with ways to say, oh, I can't, I'm giving you a special deal and I can't, my boss will be angry at me or whatever. And they can take that too far. You can take that into being disingenuous and a chameleon. But, um, there's a way to keep multiple people happy to a point, I think.
Mm. You make me think of the other extreme too. Like, what if somebody was so noble and full of honor and a sense of justice that they would just speak their mind? I've known numerous colleagues who survived, yeah, in the workplace, but still managed to really speak their mind. But I also think there could be such uh, tropes that are relevant, like a fool's errand, or do you really want to die on that hill? Is that the hill you want to die on? Um, just being foolish in the workplace. And I think of the old film Jerry Maguire, right? With
Mm.
Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise got fired. He did not voluntarily leave. He did get fired. But there's a kind of foolishness potentially to, choose your battle, choosing the wrong battle, a foolish hill to die on that it isn't in your values or doesn't completely offend your sense of being able to stay you in the workplace. Um, Maybe
Yes.
as a way of avoiding, lack of wisdom in
Yes. I mean,
choosing how to communicate.
you have to live to fight another day. And so that becomes a big that becomes that's a tall order, and it can be a tough pill to swallow, just to layer on the cliches. So you have to, and I think politics is like the ultimate example of this. How much do you sell of your soul while retaining it? I mean,
Right.
enough of it to feel human. So no specific examples on that. I'm too smart to do that. But um I think in any career, it's like, if I have a client and I care about them, but they got late, they were late to a session and they're not getting up so my next client can come in, we got a problem. And that happened, by the way. I had to explain, I can't, we can meet again and I care about you, but I can't jeopardize this other relationship. So, I mean, that's an easy cut and dry example.
Yeah.
Not violating your boundaries as a therapist because you want to continue to work in that field. I think a lot of therapists get swallowed up by their
Mm.
empathy to the point, like, you don't need to give clients money. You don't need to engage in a lot of boundary breaking, or any, preferably. That's my practice. But um you have to say, what's the cost benefit? What does it help the world if I choose to die on this hill and get really personal, and live to what I would do if I were just John Smith, and not John Smith LPC or
Uh-huh.
PsyD or PhD. So I
Yeah.
think you got to be realistic. Naivete is a big problem that destroys people. And there's different reasons that they are that way. Um, I would say also, people pleasing is a very bad habit. And usually people pleasers can never really fully please anybody because they're trying to please everybody. So that comes up for me. Like, for displacement, if you can't tell your parent where to get off when you're an adult, and you can't limit with them, you may take it out on people, or may turn it inward and be afraid of your own shadow. And I think people who are more passive adopt that. And I think they need to come into my office, if they're my client, and just talk trash about who hurt them and be angry about it and push that out and see that nobody can hurt them for their anger, because inner displacement, chronic internal displacement, causes a level of neuroticism that's very self-eroding. And I've seen that quite a bit in my practice. People who need to get angrier and then let it go like a fever. You've got to get the fever and boil out the sickness, and then you're done.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow. That is that's a lot. You had me thinking on a lot of topics, all involving the workplace, really.
Yeah.
Where um okay, the more primitive the ego defense, the less conscious it is. Meaning
Yes.
that it's more infantile. Like, we don't have memory until we're age 3 or 4 or 5, right? We don't remember anything except maybe one little snippet or something.
Yes.
So we're not awake yet. We're not conscious yet. The
Yeah.
more primitive we are, the less conscious we are. The more we use mature ego defenses, we have to be conscious and purposeful. So
Yes.
I was thinking of like tactics for how do you stop yourself from doing these primitive defenses like displacement and triangulation as being one form of that, scapegoating. How do you stand up for what's right without endangering yourself, let's say? Well, one would be get into the present moment mindset, be mindful, be awake,
Yeah.
aware, and mindful. So anything that gets you in the present, like yoga, meditation, taking a walk, a hike, being in nature, using your five senses, though all of those things are going to get you rooted in the here and now. I
Yes.
also think of, oh, I know what it was. You made me think of the author Steve Stewart Williams, who is going to have a book come out, or he's going to complete it, by the winter. Um, he
Hmm.
wrote something recently. It said, I don't know where he got it, but he wrote that from an evolutionary psychology perspective, um, human communication is indeed 70% gossip.
Hmm.
That's fascinating. 70% of human communication is gossip. So there's an economy of having the goods on others. There's a
Yes.
gossip economy socially among people. And one of the major ways of leveraging social power for yourself would be through manipulating the reputations of others and the protection of your own. So doesn't displacement manipulate? Maybe you don't really care, you're not doing it on purpose, it's not out of envy, but manipulating the reputation of another person to protect yours is part and parcel of this ego defense of displacement,
Yes.
right?
So, I mean, yes, absolutely. So I fully am on board with that. I mean, you get into, so there's I love these deep, difficult conversations about personality. So, the person who is the most infantile reacts with so much bluster and sound and thunder to everyone all the time about everything, with lashing out and tantrums. And the person who's slightly above that will react to, people they consider beneath them with anger, which is not morally commendable in the least, but is somewhat reputationally okay to a point until you get unveiled in a hit piece or through gossip that hits you as the megalomaniacal boss or whatever you are, difficult, right? Someone
Yeah.
NPD. So then you get like the healthy level of, expressing your anger, and when it's relevant in a good boundary way. And then you have people high in psychopathy who are very cold and will take things out on people just because they enjoy it, not particularly because they feel hit by any kind of more, I don't know. It's not as much reactive aggression as instrumental aggression, just because it's enjoyable. Sadism, in other words, and so that's just
Yeah.
unrelatable for many people. Um, so the reason I brought up psychopathy is because psychopaths, or those who exhibit psychopathy, are usually considered like the master social game players because they don't allow ego to make them lash out. They coldly calculate their moves in a way where they have some plausible deniability. So they get
Right.
to the highest kind of play level, but at a cost as well, because there's so much confusion and chaos. It's just not immediately noticeable, like with someone more narcissistic who will let you know that they hate you often.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I think when you're playing the social game, you have to know that there your needs matter, and sometimes you have to remind people of that. And theirs do too. And sometimes if you're tempted to cut that off and to dismiss their needs, that can really bite you. And if you don't care about it because of empathy, reputation's a big motivator. So the idea of reputational management, usually the best strategies are those of, showing what you have to offer and speak softly and carry a big stick. Get out of environments or show that you're not a whipping post in environments where they're suboptimal when you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the roots of intuition. If
Mm.
if there are two drivers of decision making, and decisions can be more mature or less mature, more constructive or less constructive, more win-win game theory wise, or more win-lose, then the two drivers of every decision we make are, one, conscience or ethics, meaning as a kid and an adolescent, I learned my lesson well, that when I say or do such and such, it can really hurt another person. And
Yes.
I don't want to do that. So I had to go through the mistake of hurting someone's feelings and then getting the feedback so that I could build my ethics tank, my
Yes.
storehouse of ethics. But there's also the flip side, which I use the word intuition to denote. You might also call it shrewdness or worldly wisdom, but it would be having enough bad experiences in enough bad environments that you fill up your tank of intuition about, oh, I don't know about that job.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that workplace or that interview. I once had an interview 35 plus years ago where the CEO was a nurse. Nothing wrong with that, but it was unusual at the time. And she interviews me for a position as a attending physician. And I couldn't quite, it was so obvious, but I couldn't quite peg what was incredibly wrong with this job, this workplace. When she interviewed me, she never once made eye contact. She was looking very far to the side the entire interview, every question. Not one time did our eyes actually meet during
Wow.
this interview. And it was so like otherworldly and weird and different that I couldn't even put in words what was wrong with that interview. Well, I ended up taking it. They offered a lot of money. So I learned about not accepting big money for terrible workplaces. a-
Sure.
Um, and that stuck with me for life. But it ended up horribly. I won't even go into, what they wanted me to do, and, the policies and all these things.
Sure.
But thinking back, I was like, wait a minute. She did not look me in the eye even once. So that's intuition,
Yeah.
right? So we need conscience, ethics for every decision, but we also need intuition, which is also an experience garnered resource through experiences. In
Yeah.
other words, you got to fail. You got to fail a lot. You got to fail in various colors and various flavors of failing to really
Nobody,
fill in your intuition.
I love that. Nobody wants to be the villain, and nobody except the ones who do. Most people don't want to be villain. Even villains usually think they're the hero. Nobody wants, and this is another thing. There's almost this psychological superstition that if you're the one that tells something bad, you're the one who makes it that way, or the residue sticks to you. And I think, sure, immature people will not like hearing negative, even when you're not even if it existed without you saying it. But I think parents and therapists and teachers have a very sacred obligation to say the kind of thing you said at the beginning of or middle of our talk, that there are some bad people out there. And so, as a way to bootstrap wisdom, like the training wheels for wisdom that you equip kids and clients with, is you validate that, yeah, it can be a scary world. Don't go into it lightly. And even when I've done spaces with people before, they've said stuff like everyone's doing the best they can and people have a good heart or whatever. It's like, well, you better hope that's who you're talking to. Because I've worked for 10 years in this field and I've had tons of clients tell me terrible stories. So, sure, there's a bias there because they're coming to me for bad stuff. So they're telling me bad stuff. I'm smart enough to know that. and no statistics. But I also know, oh, I've heard stories like that from non-clients. Oh, I've had a story before of something weird or unethical that I've observed or dodged. So I think people who want to cling to the Pollyanna sort of um worldview and don't want to be the bearer of bad news, it comes at a cost. It's funny, I'm wearing my shirt um from the Creed concert. Human pride sings a a vengeful song. Human pride sings a vengeful song. Yeah, I didn't even plan on our talk today being that, but I mean, there's tons
Huh.
of pride,
Wow.
and you've got to learn to not anger the wrong people when you're in a lower position, if you can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of wisdom you can gain that my parents endowed me with, and that you just some people don't want to dirty their mouths telling the truth about the world. And I find that very interesting. And that's a very primitive way of looking. I like what Michael's, I think it would, forgive me if I'm crediting it
Yeah.
wrong. Justin, no, it was Justin. Thank you
Where's
for the
Michael?
comment. Michael had some stuff about workplace negativity trickling down. Yeah. And it's especially bad in workplaces where they want to force feed you a sunny narrative and give you like, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but you need to just be honest with people because they can take feedback if you don't sugarcoat it, but make it seem like it's like a backhanded thing. People hate being lied to.
Mm. Yeah.
They just do. They don't want
Yeah.
to be told. They want to just get the straight truth and not be manipulated about it, I think.
I will agree with that. I was thinking simultaneous to what you just covered that there's starting to be more and more research and information about what are proving to be masculine and feminine instincts, that there
Mhm.
are gender based or let's say biological sex based instincts, and you could call them masculine instincts and feminine instincts. And you hear me often say Dr. John Barry and Dr. Martin Seeger have
Mhm.
laid out, rediscovered, unearthed the first three masculine instincts, which are number one, being a provider and protector. I call that the Zeus instinct. Number
Mhm.
two, fighting and winning. I call that the Ares instinct after the Greek god of war. But then the third instinct was kind of unexpected for me, but made perfect sense. It's stoicism. It's removing yourself, backing off from the social milieu when there's conflict, to kind of examine what's going on and to keep your cool, and above all, not to emote publicly. So not to lose your, you know what, and get angry impulsively, and to not display your lack of courage and your terrible anxiety and your sadness and all these things. It's the exact reverse of Brene Brown type advice. It actually, I think, harms men. Um, to tell them to be vulnerable because it violates this third crucial instinct that makes them feel, well, alive, makes them feel masculine and alive and have passion for life. So I think there could be whole other conversations we could have about the relationship between gossip, aka displacement, and scapegoating and all that workplace subterfuge that goes on, and males, and how they feel best when they can remain silent about these sorts of things. So, and men do remain silent. You never saw men going out complaining about, injustice toward, males accused of things that it ends up being proven that they didn't do anything wrong. Like, wasn't there, was it Variety or no, Rolling Stone magazine did this hit piece on the three lacrosse players at North Carolina years
Oh,
ago, right? And like
yeah.
giant court cases came out of this, and it turns out they didn't do anything wrong. They had nothing to do with it. The accuser even finally came out recently and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I just made all that up."
Mhm.
Well, males don't get that um, that kind of, "Hey, brother, let's, start a movement about the injustice that's been done to you." but women do. So if you study Deborah Tannen, the sociolinguist, who studies boys and girls on kindergarten playgrounds,
Yeah.
and how boys the boys get most harmed by losing contests. So that
Hmm.
violates the Aries instinct. And girls get most harmed by banishment from a social group.
Yeah.
And she talks about how the social group of girls has an economy of trading secrets and knowledge of others. There's a whole bartering of basically gossip. It runs on gossip, gossip of the bad kind, gossip of the better kind, concern for a friend, concern for other people. So boys and girls, men and women, biologic males and biologic females have a vastly different approach to using gossip, being vulnerable, that great new word, being vulnerable, and being reputationally harmed, and using this ego defensive displacement. I think males and females, biologic males and biologic females, have very different approaches
Hmm.
and experiences of it. So that's another dimension of this, right?
Yeah. Can
'Cause
I add something?
yeah,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. You
No,
finish it. I don't want to add
well,
until you're done.
well, I was just going to say the psychoanalytic literature talks about it talks about virtually not virtually it talks about all of these ego defenses as being, it doesn't matter who's using them, male or female, that both
Yeah.
males and females all use all the ego defenses at some point in their life as they grow. And I think it's interesting that there's no differentiation between males and females.
Right.
Perhaps because back in the day, it was not known that there are masculine instincts and feminine instincts.
I think you hit on something that would be redundant, very crucial, just crucial. But I mean, I think I would say,
Exceptionally crucial.
yeah, significant. I know there's like a statistics joke that something's either statistically significant or not. It's not extra significant, right? It's more like the direction of the correlation to strength. But anyway, not to geek out. I think in the past we were fish and we didn't know to describe the water. I think in the past people wouldn't have called it female or male instincts because they just assumed that's what a man and woman was.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
think
It's kind of
now,
an unspoken
yeah.
understanding.
So,
Same thing. Meant the same thing.
and I want to give guys a break on one hand. I also want to say, because I'm very big into men's mental health, as anybody who's listened to us knows, I also think that all men aren't motivated by the same thing for helping or not helping. I think there's a lot of men who don't like other men and maybe have a bone to pick, or they think their way to get ahead with women is to just undercut other men and be the sneaky effer, as you've talked about before.
Yeah. So, so are you saying sublimation might be the more mature version
Yeah.
of displacement? Sublimation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So instead of, all the boss is angry, therefore I'll blame Jimmy
Hmm.
for what happened,
Hmm.
displace it onto Jimmy, who is an easy target. I will tell the boss I need to explore things more, and we'll have a meeting. Could we have a meeting next week about it with my findings?
Hmm.
Can I table things for now?
Hmm.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
if you are? Wait, let's see. What does Michael say? Some other things here.
Yeah. He
Um,
had some good stuff about workplaces.
Psychosocial hazards at work, bullying, burnout. Burnout's interesting too, right? People kind of look the other way if somebody gets they talk about burnout a lot and say, "Oh, we need to make sure you don't get burned out. We need the Gallup 12 factors which prevent burnout, by the way. Do I have the right tools? Am I valued? Do I feel valued? Is there good communication? And above all, is there meaning in my work? Is it meaningful in some way? So whether it was the car salesman or the McDonald's manager, there is always meaning, if you want to find it and you want to develop yourself, right?
Yeah.
And there'll always be future jobs and a career trajectory. But what do you think about a situation where and maybe yeah, we've gone an hour and a half. We always do. It's so easy. Good talking to you.
It's great talking to you.
What would you do if you're in an inescapable situation where, the boss, your career is rare. It's rare to find jobs in it. It makes a lot of money. It has a ton of meaning, but you just got a bad apple. You got a really super dark triad boss or boss's boss, and they're on the warpath against some human group or political party or something.
Yeah.
What do you do about that? I mean, I guess at some point you would come face to face with your own violating your most dearly held values potentially, I guess.
So it's almost like being a spy during a war,
Oh,
when you know that you believe one thing and you're doing what you have to in the moment, and you've got to be connected to your values. If that's faith, then there's clear rituals for that. If it's not, then you have to invent them. You have to go back to the reading and the relationships that you care about to fuel you after hours. You have to cultivate relationships and coalitions with people that you respect within the organization or outside. Build up your own reputation. That's never a bad idea, no matter what position you're in. I mean, when I was a caseworker and I got trained in EMDR, um, early on, before I was even licensed yet, I started being a minor EMDR authority at the organization. And so um, I was building reputation. And I'm not painting this as I don't put that as a terrible situation where I had a bad boss. I enjoyed it. I'm just saying I was
yeah,
early on in the
yeah.
career. So what you have to do is you have to stay connected to your why, right? Your what it's all about. Um, do things that connect to your body, like exercise or whatever you want to do with um, tiring yourself out in some adaptive way, like red light therapy. You stay in a red light booth. That's really good for skin and cell
Oh yeah. Yeah.
rejuvenation. There's a ton you can do that might sound very minor, but that retunes your body to safety and to the fact that you're well. And so also letting people know, like, if you have to in secret, like, oh, I think you're awesome or whatever. If you can build relationships with the people that you feel are being scapegoated or in some way, I mean, it's very much like a TV show that's got political intrigue. So things like House of Cards. Of course, I'm not advocating being like Kevin Spacey or his character Frank Underwood. I'm saying look at how the different relationships are managed. Look at how you have to think of multiple people's interests and how you can set yourself out as an ally. I mean, Game of Thrones is an example as well. And of course, there's bad actors in that, very bad characters, but there are some very just ones as well that you can follow. You can follow Tyrion Lannister. You can follow Bran Stark. You can follow people who try to be righteous. And of course, there's some who fly too close and don't play the game well enough. And that's very instructive. So basically, you really have to stay attuned to what you ultimately want your career or place to look like and not take personally that which isn't. And even that which is, someone only knows about you what they think of you. They don't really know you. And they're often angry or reacting to something else.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Mic drop.
Well, I appreciate it. I
That's
get these kind of questions, man, and I had to grow to learn to answer them.
yeah.
I didn't like
Yeah.
not having an answer. I hate that. I want answers for clients, and somebody can analyze me and say, "Oh, tell me about your addiction to competency." And I would say, "Sure, let's do a whole podcast on it. Maybe and a nice fee." But it's what do you want to do to generate your answers, to know how you're going to handle something and stand and mentorship, dude. That's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah. Oh,
When I
yeah.
when I have a
Yeah.
question I wanna ask you, or I wanna ask someone who I know has more
Yeah.
experience, why would I not do that? Why would I be too prideful to ask, to have a dialogue? That's a hugely undiscussed thing now
You
is
you
mentorship.
gotta have
It's a
mentorship. Yeah, you gotta
Yes.
I mean, any career, if it's the McDonald's manager we're talking about or the car salesman or any career that you're in, there's got to be somebody slightly older than you. You know what? The time or the age difference. I always thought made sense to avoid an Oedipal conflict where the youth wants to kill you. So you don't want that if you're going to be a mentor. But
Yeah,
you also don't want somebody so close in age to you that you become competitors. Really,
sure.
kind of like Freud and Jung or something like this. I
Yeah,
think it's 15 years. I feel
okay.
that it is 15 years. If it's more than a 15-year age difference with a mentor, then you're eventually going to want to kill them, figuratively speaking.
Mm,
You're going to come into competition with them because they're an old fuddy-duddy, old dad. And if they're 10 years or 5 years older than you, there is the potential for collegial competition that
sure.
can turn bad, go south.
Fascinating.
But anyway, yeah, I've always thought that. But you got to have a mentor. I was just talking to a friend about he's looking for movies to watch with his boy, with his 9-year-old boy, and I just saw a movie last night that's about father son, mentor mentee type issues called 28 Years Later. Have you heard
Yeah,
of it?
dude.
It's a zombie movie.
I've
Have
seen
you
that.
seen it?
Good.
No.
Yes. We should talk. Oh,
28
dude, I
years?
see horror movies all the time. I'll see like almost. I'm a horror movie buff. Absolutely.
And I can't believe you mentioned Hostel earlier because Hostel is like one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen.
Pretty
I
bad.
mean,
Yeah.
and yet it's fascinating about the reptilian brain and the dark side of humans. But yeah, so I gave him that recommendation. I gave him the recommendation of the 300, of course. The initiation of a boy into a man,
Yes.
right? Got to kill the wolf, when you're a boy, so that when you're a man, you can face death, the
Yes.
actual death, and you can also face any perilous challenge that comes your way short of death. Death is the worst, of course. And then lastly, the movie Wanted, I think 2007, 8, somewhere around there. James
Yeah.
McAvoy and Angelina Jolie. That is actually the tale of the Oedipus. It's actually
Hmm.
the Oedipus Rex, told as a cartoon, an animated novel,
Yeah.
a graphic novel, right? So Wanted is very good, and it's the story of a father and a son, and the son hates the father, doesn't realize the father does care for him, and has watched him all his life. Um, anyway, um, I digress.
Tron Legacy with Jeff Bridges as the
No,
father.
please, no. Really?
You don't like Tron?
Oh no, really? I don't like Tron.
Hey, you don't have to. That's okay. I'm seeing the new one this
Oh
year though.
man. Uh, okay. Tron Legacy. Well, you come from a tech family, right? So you gotta like Tron.
Yeah, I like the music too soundtrack. Got some electronic dance music in there, the oots oonts.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
No, that's good stuff. I mean, yeah, 28 years later is
yeah,
bonkers, but it's very I thought we should talk I thought about that being a good
yeah,
topic actually. We should
yeah. We
revisit
should.
that one in our next
Yeah, we
episode.
should. There's all kinds of things in it. Like, I mean, not to get on a total different tangent, but I just want you to know before we do this, think about it and do this. I didn't like the the mother of the boy, the wife of the man, is coming down with some illness,
Hmm.
and the boy suspects the man is letting her die and maybe saw him being infidelitous or something.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't like the whole. It almost seemed like it was painting all males are bad and fathers are bad. I didn't like that aspect to it. I liked when he took his son out into the wilderness across the causeway, the bridge, and then had to fight zombies and make him a man, initiate him. In other words, I like that, but I didn't like how suddenly dad is bad. It's the classic divorced dad. He's bad. Mom and child are good. But
Well,
anyway,
yeah, no, the
maybe you
father,
could set
no,
me straight on that.
what?
Maybe you can set me straight on that when we discuss the film.
Sure, I'll save that. That's a good, and I
But
think
I
there's,
loved 28 days later, 28 weeks later,
hmm
28 years later. It's what a trilogy.
yeah,
Great,
and they're making a
great
fourth one as
trilogy.
well, by the way.
No way.
Yeah,
Wow.
it ended on it ended on a good note, but it also ended with some interesting prospects for
Questions.
sequel. So
That's great.
yeah,
Director Danny Boyle. Yeah.
yeah, good stuff.
Awesome.
Very good recommendation. Yes,
All
it's
right.
exciting.
Well, good. Well, thanks, Jeremy, for joining me again. And
Of course.
you paid members who want to get on a live Zoom call, I will go do that within 10 minutes and we'll keep going. All right. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Good to
This was
talk
a
again.
blast.
Yeah, always is. Always is. Thanks.
See
Bye.
ya.